This is the Harmonic Motion podcast, a place where you, dear listener, can join with automotive aftermarket professionals as they delve into and discuss the matters which matter.
Welcome to this episode of the Harmonic Motion podcast. I'm absolutely delighted to have Tim Benson from Oldfields Garage with me today to discuss all sorts of things, especially the matters that matter. Tim is running the family business there in Leominster, Oldfields Garage. So Tim, welcome.
Hi James, thanks very much for inviting me on.
No, it's great. Thanks for giving up your time to come and share your story, Tim. I really appreciate that. Sharing your story, one of the things when we were discussing coming on the podcast I was really interested in is, maybe if you could share a little bit about your background of, how you ended up in the trade and your sort of journey to where you are today, to give our dear listener, an insight into what goes to make Tim Benson now the managing director of Oldfields Garage.
No, absolutely. I mean, obviously, Dad's a mechanic by trade, so I was always in and around cars in a fashion, but never really very interested in the mechanical bits of cars, if you like. It was part of obviously everything that was as the family, because Dad was very much head down and work hard, and he got the opportunity to open to take over a garage at a previous site. And what that meant is that he had the chance to take control of his own destiny, if you like, and that's sort of where it all started off. But at the time I was still at high school, and I do remember very long evenings for Dad working. Actually going back to the garage and having our little room upstairs where we used to go and watch the telly whilst Mum and Dad were working, and it basically sort of escalated from there, really. So I decided to go to sixth form. For me, it was the wrong decision at the time, because I stayed at the school sixth form and it was too much like school. In reality, not probably ready to learn more at that point, and wasn't enjoying it. So Dad hooked me up with the local VW dealer, pushed me over there to do some work experience, said, just go and have a try. He said, I don't want you to start here, just go and have a look, see what happens, and that was the beginning of the automotive journey. It was quite I mean, it was I was very lucky because I found a guy who saw something in me. I'm still friends with him to date. Colin Barker is his name, and he gave me the opportunity very quickly in that work experience. He said, well, if you'd like an apprenticeship, you can do it. So I did an apprenticeship in parts distribution and supply. Because I was quite, quick to learn and able to see things and develop, I managed to work my way within 3 years up to assistant parts manager, much quicker, and there was no real plan. It just sort of happened. But when I got to that point, I wasn't ready in reality, as a typical sort of youngster, sort of 18, 19, conquer everything and do everything. But emotionally and mentally, I wasn't ready for that level of responsibility, and started to struggle a little bit with health, and then decided, I'm ready to go and learn again. So I pitched the idea of, I'd already got my MVQ level 3, I think it was at the time, in parts distribution and supply, but I pitched the idea of working part-time, and bearing in mind we're 20 plus years ago, it was just not really an option. It was, they said no, effectively. That was the long and the short of it. So, and bearing in mind a full-time HND course, which is what I went to do, excuse me, I was 12 hours a week. So there was plenty of time to work. But anyway, so that drew that to a conclusion. So I went back to work a little bit with Mum and Dad, which was in the petrol pumps in the shop. And that's, so did my HND, went then to go back to, again, another juncture. What do you do from there? Decided that I'd go and do a degree. It was quite a big deal. I didn't have a long history of people doing degrees in our family. So it wasn't an obvious choice. Managed to get into Cardiff, which I was really proud to do, because that was one of the best schools in the country at the time. And then met a partner in Wales and had a couple of kids and sort of stayed down there. But at the end of the degree, I think I studied things which interested me, which were marketing, supply chain management. Little did I know how much that would become beneficial later on, because I think the benefit of a business degree is that you do a bit of everything. The negative is that you're not specialised in anything, so I came back to that later on, if you like, and went and managed to get a work placement in a fast-growing IT business. Again, offered a job very quickly, stayed there for 3 years, headed up the IT services part of the business, and they went into administration. So again, another decision to make. And it's funny how these things all happen and come about. So again, at that point I had a family, so I needed to work. I needed to go and provide for the family. So I went and got approached by one of the franchisees of that business to go and do a business startup, set everything up ready for them. And that was in an interesting field because that was digital marketing, but way before social media and even much of the prominence of the internet now. So this digital company was setting up websites on the Sky platform without the internet. So it's so again, that never took off because the internet changed everything in that sense. So that went then into a cosmetic surgery company, all sort of marketing and business development roles, and then needed a little bit more stability at that time. And in Wales, public sector is the big employer, and I also thought it'd give me a chance to go and work somewhere big, corporate style, even though not a company, and to work for a couple of universities in their adult education, lifelong learning departments in administration. So that was the journey to that point, really.
Yeah, no, it's some very interesting, some lovely twists and turns there, but a really good solid theme of sort of motor up until the point the HND question came up, and I think it's really interesting about maybe if that situation had arisen now when you look at the skills shortage, where an employer maybe handle that slightly differently now, thinking here's a go-ahead sort of guy that wants to learn and gain benefit to be able to do that. It's funny, in my own history I had the same thing a couple of times where in the garage I managed to talk the principal of that business into letting me have a day off a week to do a HND. Although it wasn't paid for, I had to pay for the course, I had to pay for the time off myself, but they were, I know, sort of open to that, but it was leading edge, really. That and the proposition that you've made there generally would have got a lot of no's. I had to work really hard to get to persuade them to see the benefit of that, and I luckily had an enlightened, dealer principal at that stage that saw that. But you can understand why people do say, well, what's in it for us as a business, letting you go off.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely convinced that had that story started now, it would have been, I would have had a different reaction because, I was good at my job, and we know how difficult it is to find people that are good at their job and to keep those people in the business. And it could have gone a completely different direction had that decision at that point been there. And I've still got friends it's currently Virtue now, so it's owned by a different business. It's a big monster of a machine now, but certainly I've got people that I know that are still there, and I could well have been one of those.
Yes, it's amazing. Life's twists and turns. Sometimes you don't really know, where that leads. I'm a great believer in that fickle finger of fate, that all of these things generally happen for a reason, and we're wafted along with those key decision moments that make you go left or right, but end up. I think you seem to be a very open-minded, growth mindset sort of person, and I think whatever opportunities maybe present themselves, it sounds like you've maximized that opportunity, and that's definitely a mindset thing.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that with it's interesting that I'd never thought of it like that before, but it is right. Whatever I've done, I've always wanted to do it the best that I can. And sometimes that you're limited by your ability to do that, of course, but I think you can find something in everything that you do as long as you look that way.
Yeah, it's very, very, very true. Yeah, and you mentioned there some of the learnings that you'd had along the way, and maybe some of the things that you've done in courses where you sometimes don't realise the relevance of the thing. In my own previous history, I got involved quite deeply into databases, designs, and sort of reporting. And it was technical, but it wasn't really my sort of technical. And, lo and behold, I find about 20 years later, this subject matter that I'd sort of got involved with for 2 or 3 years now becomes invaluable. And I needed that skill set, although I didn't really realise it. I'd got it under my belt and it was sat there dormant. And I've got this opportunity to do this thing. And boom, everything that I was doing 20 years ago now is uber relevant and has enabled me to accelerate really quite fast. And I think lifelong learning, if we could call it that, enables you to gather knowledge, skills and understanding along the way that can be ready to be used when the opportunity presents. And that really sounds like, what you've experienced there.
Yeah, and then and when so there was a change in my personal circumstances, which is why I ended up being back in Hertfordshire. But it was not really an intention at the time to go into the family business. It was, I sort of fell into it by not quite accident, but certainly not by intention. And we had a smaller site, very traditional type old. It was an old-fashioned business. Whilst Dad did invest in the business, it wasn't, very much. We used to fill up petrol for people. We were the last garage in Hertfordshire to still do that. So it's that type of traditional business. We eventually stopped petrol when it became, probably long after it became profitable. That was sort of where we were. And we, again, another sort of milestone that we had in that business was we had a fire, and it was a pretty scary time. It was an outside workshop, and it was the impact it had on Dad was visible. He really was shaken up by it. But I wasn't so much because I was younger and didn't perhaps see the same risk and the same concern. But effectively, a third of our capacity was taken away from us, but it wasn't that affected him, because we were fortunately within 2 days we were sort of back up and running again ish. But it was all the impact that it had. The fire travelled down fences, took out people's sheds, they evacuated the area. It was a massive deal and it was just a welding, very simple welding incident, and that's what sort of happened there. And the reason that became a junction is because the existing owners of the site didn't want to renew. They didn't want to reinstate the building, even though they'd had the insurance payout for it. So we were left with a decision, really, it wasn't my decision at that point. Dad and Mum were left with a decision on where do we go? Does he scale right back and go and do a bit of servicing until he retires in his shed, because he's got a really good long customer base? Or if I wanted to be more involved, then we'd look to go on and develop, and that's the path that we took.
Oh, interesting. What sort of age was Dad then, Tim, when that happened? So was he considering retirement or slowing down? Was it an inconvenience really, but it made a decision waymarker, and the factors of his lifestyle and circumstances sort of made him, because it's a big change, isn't it? What do you do if you're thinking about retirement or scaling back?
Yeah, I mean, so he's 60, it's his birthday today, this is really bad. He's 67 today. So it would have been 13 years ago. So, not at the age to be thinking of retirement in reality. But I think it was, it's a combination of everything, isn't it? You look at the hassle of operating a business, because it is a challenge and it is a hassle. I think when we had the fire, it aged him. Visibly, you could see that it had an impact on him, and that was also the stress was a factor in that decision. But I think the default position with a lease is to renew for 21 years, which is what the original lease was. But obviously, that can change based on the owner's virtue, and that was where, I don't suppose he was thinking of retirement at that point, but it was a case of, what do we do? And and when we moved, it was a case of everything went into it. We did as much as we could afford, but fortunately, we're able to get in a position where we had a brand new blank canvas unit, modern. And that's what interested me, because, being with respect, the older style garage wasn't interesting enough for me. It wasn't glitzy enough, if you like. It wasn't exciting enough. And this gave us the opportunity to sort of pull back in a different direction together, really.
Yeah, it sounds very interesting. That the blank canvas there is interesting. When you look at maybe some garages, when they're looking to maybe expand or grow or change direction, some of that is planned and some of it isn't planned. In the planned growth of a garage, where you end up or your next step sort of depends on where you are now. So how do you breach from the current situation to the new? It sounds like with almost as you describe it, the blank canvas, you can go, okay, if you did a summary of what situation you've got a customer base, you've got a loyal following, you've got premises that you can't exist in any longer, and then you've got new unit potential. How did you manage that transition, and did all of the customers come along from a traditional smaller business now to what maybe is in comparative terms this newfangled, new shiny, new building? What was that like in terms of transition?
So we were very fortunate in terms of the time scale that it happened over. So effectively, because the lease wasn't up, we had time on our side. So we were able to move and negotiate an exit that was early. It did get to a point where you have to say, do you know what, it's never going to be 100% ready. Let's just say, right, as of this date, we're moving, and that's what we did. But for all intents and purposes, it was ready. It was just, it was just the level of detail that you wanted to work over. But one of the challenges that we felt at the time, so the customer base, we were in a town centre location that you could walk into the town within a minute, 2 minutes. This is now an enterprise park, so out of town, it's now a 25-minute walk into town. So we had to think about that. We also had a really big marketing push, which is something that I was able to bring my skills to. Mum actually came up with the idea of doing vouchers. So all of our existing customers got given a pack of vouchers for a service or a discount off a service or an entitlement to something. And I'll be honest, I wish I'd have kept it because it would have been a nice part of our history, but I haven't. So we got these vouchers, and that was our sort of hook, if you like, to ensure that people came down. We kept the same phone number, which is obviously a big deal. We built a website to again modernize us and make it visible, but I think the key thing really was the communication of what was happening. So we didn't leave it till the last minute and say, oh, by the way, we've moved. We told people that we were moving, and we didn't say when, because we didn't want that to be an upheaval. We just wanted it to be this is what's happening. So we actually posted letters, in the old days before email was so prevalent. And I can remember sat there with Mum stuffing envelopes and getting those out to people and their voucher packs. And that was, it was an interesting time. And it was, we also had another factor within our customer base is they were quite aging. They were an aging customer base. Partly because of location, partly because that's just what happens with customers. They get older. But it was a real thought in my head that we needed to bring that age down of our customers, because if we want to offer a better level of service in terms of the customer side, not the technical side, because I think we've always been okay with that, and that's not taken away from what we did beforehand, because that's part of our history. But we had the ability to offer a better level of service because we had a nice reception office, we had waiting areas, we had a nice reception desk, We actually had people greeting when they come in. And so that part became easier, but we had to try and, I was effectively looking to try and pull some of the dealer type customers out of the dealer, because they were the ones who were used to having that type of service, bit less scared of spending money. Although we made the mistake at that time thinking that nobody would possibly pay more for our service because we're in a new location. And I think we went up by £1 an hour at that time, to cover our massive overhead that we'd just taken on. But what in reality, what we did have was we had more space, so we had the ability to expand. We had a bigger size workshop, more ramp space, so we could claw it back that way. It'd have been a lot easier if we'd have put the prices up a bit earlier, but there we are. But yeah, so we in terms of the customer base, we did actually take quite a lot of customers with us. But one thing I think people don't think about when you open up a premises or you move premises is you also open up a new customer base. And I actually half jokingly said that, maybe we should look to move again. Because if you can pull your existing customers over, which we did, and put yourself in a new position, because let's be honest, people come to a garage largely because of convenience. And then if they like what you do, then hopefully you get them back next year. And when we went into an enterprise park, we had actually a level of businesses. So, where we had chimney pots around us before, so we had one house with potentially one car, maybe two cars. We then had people now that were also working in an environment pre-COVID where they went to work, and it's very easy and very convenient for them to leave their car with us and pick it up at the end of the day. And that's where our new sort of customer base grew from.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting, and it's a really good point, Tim. Actually, that from adversity comes opportunity, and the opportunity can be multifaceted and multifold. It's obviously quite an interesting thing when you're moving. You've got an existing business that's got a turnover. It's got a level of business that is sustaining your operational costs in your previous site. You switch over to a new building with probably bigger overheads and a slightly different model. But you need to bring those existing customers with you from day 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to get you up and running. I wonder, what was the narrative, Tim, in terms of what was the messaging that went to those existing customer base about the move? What did you position that? How did you communicate that to them?
Yeah, so we, because we're a family business, people know the family. We've lived in the area for a long time, so we've got a history within the vicinity that we operate from, and the message was very much that it's going to be the same but better. And what we focused on is some of the things that we had a challenge with before: parking. So we had ample parking when we moved, not so much now, but ample parking when we moved. There was a nice waiting area, which we didn't have before. So we really focused on the things that we didn't have before that we could now offer. And it's, we just kept repeating that message back to them, really, that it's the same people, because people buy off people. But we were going to have the opportunity to do more. And one of the things that we also were able to do, so we put an MOT bay into our new site, which we didn't have before. So again, that meant that we could offer a different type of service, because we used to do collection and delivery. That was something that we sort of majored on. So it was really the things that we didn't have before that we could offer now, and just kept repeating. And I knew that if we could get people through the door, they would go one of two ways. They'd either be really impressed and you'd have them hooked again, or they'd be, this looks a bit much, and they'd go. And actually, that's okay. That is okay. If that decision is made, it's okay. Obviously, one of the first 12 months, if you like, when your new customers are revisiting, you're always very aware of the cost of an invoice. And I don't know how many people actually do this anymore, but when they draw out their invoice from 10 years ago, and you're a bit more expensive than you were 10 years ago because the costs are a bit more. But that was something that we were very conscious of, and actually probably over conscious of in reality.
Yeah, and it's easy to do that, isn't it? Because you're sort of worried at the threat that you're going to erode your existing customer base, and if you've not transitioned, you've not got customers to replace those customers, your business starts to decline. And I can see how that was a big focus. In terms of the value, because it sounds like now you've got an exceedingly good value proposition. So you've got waiting, you've got a high level of quality service, you can offer a wider range. You've now got parking. They're not suffering, in a smaller location where it's difficult to drop your car. Where do I park? That's all gone away. So yeah, it does sound like you've really increased the value proposition without really increasing the cost too much. But of course, that's a big challenge then, because you need, if your business profitability is to stay the same, you have to get, really through more work at the same margins essentially, or you have to try and drive the price up. So did you have a separate proposition for your new customers? So I'm interested, obviously you've got a new location, and when you move anywhere new, it creates that bit of a buzz that the new garage has come to this location. Did you have a similar value, customer driven? It's a family business. We've got, old school style values of quality, service levels. Did that proposition work for your new customer base, Tim?
I think we were actually, so I think we changed the focus from, we've always hung our hat on the family business, because I think when you're in a small community, that is a good proposition. But I think what we really sort of pushed was the professionalism. We'd have people that would deal with customers, and it wasn't the technician, and that meant that the technicians didn't have the hassle of having to deal with customers. On the flip side of customers, they got somebody, a smart person greeting them, no oil and mess. And that was another factor within our new site. We were able to make it tidy from the start and keep it relatively tidy. But that sort of value was more focused on professionalism. And when I look back at our Google reviews now, one of the things that keeps getting picked up in the Google reviews is that, they mention professional. And that's, a little bit by choice, and a little bit by decision, and a little bit by accident. We don't ask them to say that. However, it is what we portray. So that's obviously a big positive for us.
Yeah, and it's really good that that's being fed back. With the reviews, you do tend to hear from customers exactly what their experience is, and again, you're sort of opening up to give you the good and the bad, and if that's being repeated back at you, then that has to be the perspective from the customer. So you've really achieved that goal. Yeah. So what was the transition eventually? If you did a snapshot maybe a couple of years on, were you 50-50 old to new? Were you 60-40? Did you have where did it sort of naturally settle, if it's possible even to know that, Tim? But what's your feeling about?
Yeah, I think, so we've always had, Mum and Dad were very early on computers. Again, it wasn't internet at that point, but it was, an old Unipart KISS system on a disc used to come through the post every month or 2 months, and used to do the update, and then off you go. So we always had that level, but we never really captured that sort of information. I mean, anecdotally, I would say within 5 years, I would think we probably lost about 60 to 70% of our customers, the traditional customers, and that's not just because of change. They were aging, so that's obviously a factor with it. And I do remember at one point that we seemed to be, looking in the local press as you do, and I didn't realise that they'd gone, and I didn't realise it, and that was definitely a factor within it. But I think anecdotally, I'd say 60% probably we lost. But that's, again, it's not a bad thing, because what you're trying to do as a business is to try and find the right type of customers. And I know you've spoken about this many times before, and I know there's lots of other people in the industry that do it. But the right type of customer is hard to find. And once you get those customers, that's what you want. And you do have to accept. Only this week we've had somebody who's priced a job. I know, because I know the person, that they are, every time they ring up, they price the job, and we've lost jobs on price before. And I've actually said, what, let's just let them go. That's fine. That's, we're not struggling for customers. So if that's going to be the mindset, and they don't understand the value that we offer, Partly we're responsible because perhaps we're not portraying it well enough, but partly I think, with that particular customer, they're never gonna understand our value, and therefore they're probably not the right customer.
Yeah, no, very true. That self-selection, really, it's having the confidence, I think, to recognise that. That's the great thing. You've got that system. You're recognising that, and where it's very easy to feel put under pressure a little bit. That are we too expensive? Aren't we doing this thing? And having that confidence in your product offer to let the customer self-select and say, they're not right for us. They obviously want it done to a different standard or in a different way or to a different level or on a different time scale. That isn't what we offer. I think it's brilliant to have that level of confidence in letting that happen. That's natural, and not beating yourself up about it. And it's great to have that introspect to go, are we too expensive? Is that no? Actually, all of these 95% of our other customer base are amazed with the product we offer that we've got. There are a few that maybe slip through the net, maybe are shopping in a different way. Yeah, and you're absolutely right. Having that confidence. One of the things, one of the great concepts about customer interactions, I think, often is cited by your customer rating. If we've got customers that aren't necessarily in our sphere of they understand the offer that we've got, we can spend a lot of time managing those customers, managing their expectations, managing the conversations, managing the conflict. I'll put it as conflict, although it's not conflict, but those challenging conversations. And if you switch into, okay, if I take my best customer, the one that when they phone up, my face lights up, I'm really happy to see them, they're happy to see us. Those customers are actually neglected at the cost of managing some of your poorer customers. And you go, actually, I haven't phoned, customer A type, brilliant customer, to thank them for the business. They've sent 6 cars here this week, month, year, and it's all been trouble-free transactions. They're really appreciative. They drop boxes of chocolates. And you go, actually, the customers that are a bit of a pain that aren't really our customer are dragging our resources away, and we're focusing on them, trying to rescue them, but we're not really focusing on the good customers and maintaining that excellence in relationship. And it's one of the big challenges, I think, running a business is to have a very firm fixed view on what makes your A and B type customers, and also what makes your C and D type customers, and how you help them to maybe leave your business in a friendly way, but you're not right, they're not right. I think that's a really positive thing about managing your customer base to give you the best mix of customers that really want to do what you want to do.
Yeah, and it's very much about perception and value in any transactional type business, whether it's a long term. When I talk transaction, I don't mean buy it and go. I mean a long term thing, which is what our customers hopefully are. But you've got to. We've done so. Moving on to Oldfields now, sort of round about the COVID time, we did a refresh on our office and our signage and our branding. And it wasn't that our branding and office and signage wasn't any good, but what happens naturally over a period of time is that things get a bit cluttered. They get a bit messed up in terms of how they communicate. And we made sure that we looked at the actual business and said, right, okay, so now we just need to just modernize us a little bit more. We changed our management system as part of this process. We looked at the branding style, actually got someone to redo the brand. It was the same company that worked with us before, so we've got a good relationship. We spent quite a bit of money on our reception, and I think where I said before we just had to open the doors, now we didn't just have to open the doors. Now we needed to look at a bit more of the detail. And so we one of the nice things that we did when we moved is we put windows from our office into our workshop. And I use the analogy of seeing your food being cooked. And the reality is no one stands there watching their food being cooked. However, the fact that it's open and airy and you can see gives a feeling of transparency, which is obviously what we're hoping to achieve. We put a nice little kitchen area in our office, and we actually changed the waiting area so it's a bit more relaxed with a nice table. And the little details that we did this time round is that we chose our corporate branding that we just had done to colour our walls. We put a nice logo up behind the reception desks. We put oak worktops on the the counters, the kitchen was handmade, and those details that, yes, we paid a lot more for them, but what I think it creates in terms of perception is that when someone walks in, it's impressive and it looks nice and people think, oh, and that's positive and negative, but ultimately both positive, because sometimes someone will walk in and they'll think, oh, and that will be an, oh, I don't really think this is in our sort of spend capacity or what we're going to do. And, I do remember, I can't remember who it was, but I did know at the time, but somebody walked in the one day, had a look, and virtually walk straight back out again. But again, that is fine. That's absolutely okay for that to happen. So by building perception and value, it's really important in terms of how you present yourself as a customer. And we as far as I'm concerned, we are a premium service. I'm not really that interested in what people do in and around us in terms of pricing, because I know what we've got to do as a business to be able to maintain the standard that we want to work at, and the proposition that we want to offer, and that's how we've built our business. Again, going back historically, Dad's approach would have been much more, well, they're charging 50 quid, they're charging 52 quid, so let's go somewhere in the middle. Well, who wants to be in the middle? Who wants to be average? I certainly don't. I want to be the best, and and the way that we position ourselves is to try and be at that top level.
Yeah, and sounds like you're doing a great job with it there, Tim, as well. I think you make a really good point. I love non-verbal communication as a phrase. So non-verbal communication, it sounds like your reception is projecting that image of quality, and that image of quality and value. The window on the workshop is also really good. I heard something the other day that made me chuckle a little bit. And it was sort of thinking about the branding of a business more so about the way it operates. So back to your analogy of cooking the food, I heard the saying that said, if you saw a technician outside of a garage with the workshop doors shut, by the image that technician portrays, you will know what's going on behind the doors. So if they're scruffy and grubby and covered in filth and oil, and they look like they've just come out from a coal mine, there's a high degree of probability that the workshop is working in that same manner. And Mr. or Mrs. X's pride and joy, that is their second biggest asset they own, are they happy that it's inside that building? And I think by opening up the workshop like you've done there, people will just maybe take a sideways glance and recognize it takes 7 seconds to make that first impression. So maybe a glance into the workshop to see what you've got going on in there. Their image, the non-verbal communication is the same from inside. As soon as they step inside the apron of the building, to them coming inside the building, to them looking in the workshop, they're getting that consistent non-verbal communication of ultimate professionalism and quality. And that's that is priceless. And you sound like you've engineered that to portray the message that you're trying to get over.
And I think it starts a little bit before that as well. I know you've done things with website, and I mean it was an important part of our process. So again, we refresh the website, and the website is showing our building, our people, our work. It's branded in our way. So if you find us online, you're going to drive into our car park, and you're going to see the same on the outside, and then you're going to step inside the building, you're going to see the same, and it's consistent, and that's really important when you're creating a brand. And I had a conversation which was really nice with another local business that is a really up and coming. They're a gin company. And he said that you've done something with your business that I've never really seen in a garage before. And he said, you've created a brand, haven't you? I said, oh, have we? And it's recognised, is what I'm trying to say, is that people even if they don't say it and think it, it's visible.
Yeah, and you're probably getting that back in the professionalism, statements that are coming back in the reports that you're getting back from the reviews, Tim. That people are cognizant of that, and that there are expectations that go along with that professionalism. That you don't. Some of the things that the customer might need persuading of, like you're professional. There's a very old saying, Margaret Thatcher, love or loathe her, said, if you need to tell people you're powerful, plainly you aren't. And it came to be with the branding, the same thing. If you need to tell people your quality, that's experienced by that is acknowledged through the experience they have with you. You can tell them that, but that needs to be backed up with that experience. And you're dead right. You built that brand, and that's lovely to be recognised by another business owner that they can see that in what you've done. It's brilliant feedback. And yeah, you're right. The web image, we have a thing here called the digital drive-by. So customers that are looking to select, somebody to do something for them in this modern era, when we're into, the generations X, Y, and Z, they're looking at your digital profile in your business. They won't phone you, they won't call you. They'll look at your website if you've got one. They'll look at your social medias, and when they see, an Easter post from 1998 on your Facebook as the last update, they just look at that and go, you're not serious, you cannot be serious. Or if they're looking on TikTok or whichever other medium they're looking, the digital drive-by, I think, probably becomes more relevant to younger customer bases. And you made a really good point. I had another chap I knew really well, had a mobile business initially down on the south coast, and his business declined because his customer base were essentially stopping to drive. They got to the end of their driving lifestyle, and his customer base sort of dried up. He wasn't really into the social media, he wasn't into the new modern channels, and he couldn't change the business format to suit new customers. The product he had was brilliant, the service he offered was amazing, but he wasn't reaching those customers. He used to put adverts in the paper, and if you look at that, who aged under 25 is reading a newspaper to get those messages. So yeah, you make a really good point about your profile to reach other customers, maybe professional people of a younger nature. You have to suit your message to the channels. You have to fish in the pools that they swim in, essentially. So in terms of your business website then gave you that refreshed, it replicated what was going on with the brand image in your business. How did you think about engaging then, Tim, with the younger audience, if we're going to class it by age, or different buyers that are used to running in different channels?
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenge. I mean, I'll be honest, we don't really aim for younger drivers. And that's a conscious decision for all the reasons that we all know. But I don't want to exclude those people. So we do online booking, which is live live into our schedule using the management system we use. We update our social media. We participate in stuff in the community, which is a really big deal for us. And it's trying to sort of find those sort of customers. So my customer base really is the 35 to 60. Is that sort of age group that I'd like to attract, and because generally speaking, they're in a position financially where they can afford to do things and keep their vehicles safe and maintained, whereas younger people, and this is obviously a big generalization because it's not true of everybody, but younger people don't generally have the money to do it. You might pick up those customers because their parents are customers of your business. And it's that's where we're sort of pitching our sort of selves at. So finding those channels now. If you go back 10 years ago or 5 years even maybe, Facebook, you wouldn't find that catchment so much on Facebook. Certainly the older age, but that isn't the case anymore. And I think with all these social channels and things that are available, and we don't engage with everything, I think it's important that you keep fresh. And if you asked me the question of how much does Facebook generate you, I say probably not very much in reality. But what it does do is it keeps us in the mind of people, and with all the other clever algorithms that happen in the background, it helps to keep our website current. It helps to keep all these things fit together, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you have to tailor the message to suit the market necessarily and be in those channels. And yeah, you do. It's a combined effort. You can't just have a website. That's why I think that term digital drive-by is pretty good, because it is going to be web, it is going to be a bit of socials, it's going to be you involved in other channels. And I know one of your community endeavours is with the ladies rugby team, and one of the groups that you support there. And that those are again brilliant values in terms of being involved with the local community and supporting that club. There are friends of friends of friends that are also have an interest there, and I think it also, the involvement you've got there goes to show like-mindedness and community endeavour and support, and it shows the real people behind the business, because no matter if you've got this big corporate profile of the garage and the branding, it's still really important is what are the people like behind that, and I think those community endeavours go to show the people behind the business.
Yeah, and the rugby is an interesting one, because a friend of mine works at the rugby club, and we supported the rugby club for I think 4 or 5 years now, and the opportunity for the ladies team. So this is their first full season in competitive rugby, and he said, "You're into your marketing. What do you think about this?" And so I said, "Oh, I don't know really. I hadn't really given it any thought." And I said to him, "Well, so who sponsors them now?" And he said, "Nobody." And that was it. And I said, "Well, yeah, let's do it then, because if they haven't got a sponsor, they can't develop themselves." And it's it's not down to our sponsorship by any stretch, but I can see that they're invigorated as a team. Because they've now got not just one sponsor, they've got several sponsors. They're now competing. There's a lot of interaction with our page, which if you looked at Facebook and things, you'll see that, you won't know the names and things that comment and like, but I can tell you that a lot of them are from the rugby club. So it's that sort of engagement that's really important. But that the club in this area is a really big community deal, and it's all done. There's no profit made out of the organisation. They don't pay players big fees. They're punching well above their weight in all of the leagues. But we've got far more engagement. If I wanted to look at it commercially, far more engagement from the female rugby than we ever did for the men's. It was not really the thought or the intention at the beginning, but it's just a consequence of what happens. They were really pleased to get a sponsor, and I think that really engaged them. And I go down and I watch, which I've not really had any interest in female rugby beforehand, but I think I feel part of it, and that's something that I've tried to do. I've been half a dozen times in the last 6 or 12 months. When they play at home, I try and go down if I can. And it's it is part of being in the community, and it's a nice, being in a position to be able to do it as well is even nicer. And that's sort of one of the things we do. We do other things as well, because it's when you live in a rural area, it's really important that you're able to share and you're able to do things within that area.
Yeah, absolutely, supporting the community in their endeavours. Yep, and absolutely, cars in a more rural community, it often makes me laugh about some of the edicts coming from central government about public transport and how we need to decarbonise transport. Where we live, Tim, there's one bus a week that goes into town on a Wednesday, and then you have to wait till the following Wednesday to come home again on the same bus. It's almost, so cars mean a lot in the rural community. They mean going to work, don't they? We in fact we spoke recently on one of the service advisor courses to talk about when lads and ladies are doing the service reception function, just have an idea of what the car actually means to the customer. And we're thinking about, it means the ability to travel to a job, it means the ability to carry on their social life and the things and hobbies that they do outside of work. It involves transport to and from kids for endeavours, social endeavours and extracurricular activities. The car in the more rural communities, it means a lot to everyone, but specifically when you're 6 or 7 miles away from the nearest place, you are a freedom provider. You maintain that level of freedom to do the things that they want to do.
Yeah, no, absolutely, and we're very similar. I think it's probably more than one a week, but certainly the buses. When I looked at the schedule for the buses from our village that we're in, because I do live in the village where the rugby team is as well, and I think if you can do what you need to do in 30 minutes, you're all right.
Getting back, yeah, goodness. Yeah, no, so it's really interesting. Tim, we spoke before a little bit about your business as a brand and maybe the profile that you're building in the local community and the impression there, where do you go to get inspiration? So when working in a business, it's very easy to become sort of insular and self-focused on the things that you need to do, but often we can find inspiration if we look slightly wider. I look at all sorts of other odd things that maybe aren't related and find inspiration. Where do you look then to seek, to get that inspiration for what you're trying to do and achieve?
Well, I think actually it comes from everywhere actually, because marketing and value and how you provide service is in everything. I mean, you can take it down to the supermarket, you can take it down to the little village shop. They all have a little impact, and I watch what goes on a lot. Particularly in hospitality type businesses, because ultimately that's sort of what we're providing. And again, hospitality businesses, you've got two types of food when you go in. I mean, you've got the type of food where you come out and you think that was expensive, or you've got the type of food that you come out and thinking that was really nice. And the price isn't the problem, it's the experience. And that's that's something that I use in what we do. But also, it's looking at other garages. I think if you go, again, probably 5 years ago, beyond 5 years ago, we were quite insular as a business. We sort of got on with our own thing. We knew the garages in our area, but we didn't sort of pay much attention to the big wide world of garages in the UK. And that's been a big draw for me, to see what other people are doing and thinking, well, you don't have to be conventional, you don't have to be normal. I think during the COVID times we saw all these photos being shared of people painting their floors and doing really real pride in what they're doing, and it just grabs you. It grabs you as an individual. If you're the way that I am, then I want to try and improve and be better all the time. And you sort of see what other people are doing. You think, I can do that, and I can do that, and maybe I can do that a bit better, and maybe I can do that, but I can't do it better because of the circumstances that we're operating in. But it's really, I'm in a fortunate position where I don't have to be in the business every day. It's fortunate by me engineering it, so it's not by accident. But what it has given me the chance to do is to go and see other garages and see what people do. I do engage in communities on social media. I look at what's happening in part of the Garage Hive community, which is a really positive, proactive community, part of and Andy Savers community and various other automotive communities. And it's one of the things that I really love about the whole industry is there's so much positive support if you look for it. And I think, we are in a fashion all competing against each other. However, I don't think even within our local area, I don't think there was anybody that would do any harm to anybody. And if they could lend you a tool to get you out of a hole, I think that's just what happens naturally. And I don't think as an industry we shout about that enough.
No, you're dead right. There's often, a lot said for the competitive nature of garages, but you're absolutely right. In the wider community, when you get into the middle and upper echelons of professional businesses, then people are very keen to share either their mistakes, so something that didn't work for them, or different ways of thinking about challenges that you've got. And those communities you mentioned, Garage Hive and Andy Savers community, in terms of groups, I can think even the last few days where somebody's popped on there with a question and they're looking for a bit of advice, or they're thinking about this, or they've got this particular problem. And you're absolutely right. Positivity comes flowing out from other people in that group. Maybe with a phrase of thinking, maybe suggesting some of the stuff that those guys have tried that worked or didn't work. But generally, supporting and encouraging, because I think anyone in a business realizes that the difficulty that you've got, it is a very lonely business. There's lots of pressure in being the business leader, and you often feel, I always feel, when you see somebody asking that question, you've been in that situation, you've really got that sort of level of empathy that they're in a bit of a fix and a hole, and with some guidance and a few gentle, quiet words, it gets that change of thought to go, do you know what, think about this slightly differently. So
Yeah, and I think, and again, obviously it's your business in training, but not just the going away on a course type training, but the things like, where you can pick up when you go to conferences, you can go to trade shows, like the DPF Doctor conference I went to last year. And I think there's so much that you can pick up from putting yourself out there and being out there. And up until 5 years ago, I didn't really do it. And I certainly, it's not been something within our business that we've ever done hugely, but I think if you put yourself out there, you've got the opportunity to go and learn, you've got the opportunity to go in and study and understand and benefit from other people's mistakes. Because I can't remember, there's many people who use the phrase that there's no problem that hasn't been fixed before. And it's absolutely true, because and the problem might be slightly different and it might be in a different fashion. However, there's bits that you can pick up from anything that you do. You've just got to be in the right places to be able to pick up that information.
Yeah, I think you also have to have that open-minded nature of you never know it all. You're never too big to take that advice, and I think having that open mindset. I've also heard it called a growth mindset, where you're very open to those opportunities or the different ways of thinking about stuff, which I can see in what you've done and achieved. It's that open-mindedness and the growth mindset of going, there might be something in this that we could adopt to change a process that we've got going on or the way we approach a business. And I think you're also right. Garage Hive community, the DPF Doctor and Andy Savers network are full of like-minded people that are in that same mindset state, that are trying to lift everybody. Nobody's trying to hold anyone back. We're all trying to really, they call the rising tide lifts all ships, and I think that's some of those sentiment in those groups that does that.
And there's many more as well. It's those are just the ones I could think off the top of my head. There's so many. As I've sat here, I'm thinking of all these things that have had an impact on things that we've done or things that we're doing, and but you've just got to engage in it. That's the critical thing. You've got to engage in the process of sharing and learning, and as long as you can do that, as long as you do that, you will get something out from it. There's absolutely no way that you can't.
Yeah, no, very, very, very true. And Tim, I was going to talk to you then also about, getting out there and being out there, about your recent experience, because you had some great level of success at the Top Garage this year round. And I wonder if you might be able to share. So congratulations, hearty congratulations for that achievement.
Thank
you. Would you be able to share with our listener a little bit about your journey through Top Garage and maybe what led you to being able to swipe the title?
Yeah, so but just as we were about to move from our old premises to our new premises, we picked up the final Unipark Car Care Centre of the year before it all went very Pete Tong, and that was our sort of first taste of it, really. A few years on, we got involved in motor codes and did that sort of entered that and finished finalist and so on, but the difference, in my opinion, with these type of awards is there's a process involved that actually looks at businesses that goes beyond somebody applying and voting. And so Top Garage started for me sort of three years ago. I got invited by a friend of mine to go to Top Garage on their table, and we went down and went and had a look. And I just observed really what was going on and what happened. I didn't know anything about the process, anything about what happened, but I was there for the evening celebrations, and yes, I did celebrate quite nicely. But what it gave me a taste of is that what is it that these garages did. So I actually went, all the finalists, I went and had a look at them, did a digital drive-by, if you like, some of which I knew, some of which I didn't. So just tried to sort of get a feel for what it is that they do. And then I quickly realized, actually, we do a lot of that stuff. So why can't we be in, amongst the top garages in the country? And so last year we entered and went through the process. So then I got an understanding of what happens. So the fact that you submit something that says that you think you can do this. Then you get assessed on it. Then you get the mystery shop type approach, and all of these processes. And we got to the final. I was really pleased with how it went. We got picked by a company called Hunters of Linlithgow up in Scotland, and we, just by pure accident, were sat on their table when I had to do the celebratory face that I didn't really. No. In reality, they were a great bunch. They were such nice people to spend the evening with, and I loved it. It was really not. If I was going to lose to anyone, I'm glad I lost to them. And we sat there and we talked and reflected, and something that they did, which was really interesting, was they had 2 employees from the business go and pitch. And I thought that was very brave of the owner, very trusting of the owner. But actually, the more I got to understand, I realised exactly why it happened. It's because they were driving it, not the owner. So that was an interesting evening. But I felt really pleased that we got to the final, because I think that is a real achievement. But I couldn't help feeling a bit gutted that we didn't win, and I think that's part of me. And whilst I was I can celebrate after, at the time I was like, I don't really know what I could have done more to get myself in there, and so I requested feedback. I don't know if everybody does that, but I asked them, what is it that stopped us from winning? I probably use the phrase something like, why didn't we win? And I got some really good feedback, and I then realised actually the things that were feedback I had addressed, but it wasn't what they were looking for. And that was around EV, and we haven't got long enough to talk about that at the moment. So we made a conscious decision, because of our rural area, not to do EV, and we were marked down because we didn't do and address anything EV. So I thought, well, actually, that's quite fixable. We can get somebody trained to do EV, and then I could tick that box, if you like. So we did that, and then re-entered this year. So there's me thinking, right, I've got my box ticked. I'm, they can't possibly not let me win now. And then what happened then was they did nothing about EV in this set of questions. But anyway, so we went through the process that they sort of do, and I'm reasonably confident in my ability to position our business and to pitch our business, because nobody knows it better than me. It's just a case of, in reality, is that what they're looking for at this stage of the process? And it doesn't matter, do I think that anybody else within our category couldn't have won? They absolutely could have won, because they wouldn't be in the final if they weren't. But obviously I was able to get my point across and make it very difficult for them to not let me win. I think with any of these competitions, it's you do have to have a winner, but I think it's a case of why you can't win rather than why you can win, because everybody there, if they're in that room, they've got ours is a 1 in 9 chance of winning, which is pretty good odds to do. But so I pitched the 3-minute presentation, did that. Because I do a little bit of presenting and things anyway, so that bit I don't find difficult. It's just a case of, can I get it all over in 3 minutes, which isn't very long. And then I had 40 minutes then really to give ourselves the best shot of winning. And I think that's what I did. I mean, I know I still ask for feedback, because I don't think, even though I knew we won, the feedback is what helps you be there next year. So I asked them what happened and how did I win? And I think they said that I'd scored 99 out of 100 in the interview. So I was like, I'm obviously very pleased with that, because that's a very good score. But of course I asked the question, so who marked me down? But it is so that was the sort of process. I mean, I think I believed I could win last year. I believed I could win this year. I didn't know whether I would win, and that's not me being cocky or arrogant or anything, but I think that we do a good job, and I think I'm reasonably good at being able to convey that message, and that's sort of what happened. And then when we were at the awards, which is really nice because I was sat just behind your table, and I had mum and dad on our table. They also came last year, and my wife as well, and it was it was really nice because I was able to pick up that award, because whilst I was the one there and I was the one who did the pitching and I was the one who did the application, it's not my award. It's I couldn't do it if we didn't have the team behind it, and I certainly couldn't do it if mum and dad didn't start the journey 30 odd years ago. So it was really nice to be able to be there and have a nice embrace with dad, to actually win it. And I will say it was emotional. It was an emotional moment to pick that up. And that was what happened, really.
Yeah, no, that's a really lovely story, and reflecting that back to, it is about the bigger team. It is about the chances and opportunities that we are given to take the mantle on. Really, you've been given the baton, so to speak, and have run with it. And I can only imagine how amazing it was to have your folks there to see that sort of overt celebration in you achieving top garage in that 10 plus category. It's it's a no mean feat. So yeah, hearty congratulations. You mentioned some really interesting stuff there about the evaluation processes. There's a lot of benefits. Even you did a really interesting thing, and we recommend that, and we recognise that in competitions where entering one year really gets you to understand what it is about that process, what it is maybe the evaluation criterion is done, because it does change year on year, but professionalism is always at the fore, the mix of service, the things that you offer to your customer base, how you execute that. As you said, there's a bit of a mystery shop that goes on. You as a garage owner then get to make a proposition in your entry. So this is us, this is our garage, here's a little bit about it. There's a second tier of evaluation, then there's a little task for you to do in terms of asking questions about a scenario. Then there's an interview where you do a pitch. So it's a bit like Dragon's Den, where you pitch your business, and then you're probed then on a set of questions to help fill in any gaps to convince the judging panel that your garage is the top. So it's quite a thorough process, quite a great, but a good opportunity for learning. And again, I think the garages that really prosper, as you've identified it, Tim, it's not from knowing why you won, it's from knowing maybe why you didn't win, or if you've lost that mark, what was that? What was the criteria? Where could I do better? That, again, growth mindset that you're demonstrating there is really how to reach that pinnacle of excellence. So no, it's really good to hear you had that.
Yeah, it's definitely, and I think that going through the process of entering any awards, so we've entered 3 this year and got to the final in all 3, and it's really about, it gives you an opportunity to look at what you do, and I think that's really understated in terms of the process. The chance that you've got to actually sit and look at how you operate as a business and what you can do, and what the judging process is aside from it. But even if you do it and you don't get to the final, you still get a chance to look, and that's important when you're trying to develop a business of any type.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it gives you the fresh eyes, because you maybe look at your business as if it was the judges looking. So when you evaluate processes, or maybe the setup, or maybe the way you execute stuff, it's something that comes back quite often, is that we looked at the workshop with fresh eyes and saw this pile of stuff just behind the door that's been there because it's where it lives. But we've looked at that from a judging perspective and gone, well, our customers are seeing that as well, and what image does that portray? So the fresh eyes of self-evaluation as part of that process, you're absolutely right, are immense and invaluable. It's a bit similar to mentorship, where you have somebody that comes in to talk to you. It's a bit like an unmanned mentorship that entering the competitions gives you the option to prepare your evaluation on your own business, self-evaluation. And you're right, you'll spot some things that you can do better, and that's pretty much what I think while I'm involved, why I'm involved in that conversation is that driving yourself to the best version of you that you can be, whoever you are, whatever garage business you're in. It's that aspiration and the improvement process. Little by little, you'll improve, and winning is the cherry on the top. So congratulations once again. But the process of being able to win is where the value is. The winning isn't necessarily the value bit. It's lovely, but the process that you've undertaken is where you win.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, no, good stuff. Tim, and I wanted just to bounce off you again. I noticed you've been travelling around the countryside with your presenter's hat on at several of the Schaeffler events around the countryside. Talk to me about that. What's in that for Tim and Oldfields Garage? Why do you involve yourself in that situation, Tim?
I think when I sort of step back, I mean, presenting things has been something that I've done through my career anyway. So it's not something particularly new, but presenting in this sphere is new. And what I decided was that, it started off really as our garage is very close to Schaeffler's HQ in Hereford. I've got a friend who I used to work with at South Hereford Garages, and I met him ironically at Taunton College, and through another friend of mine, and then lo and behold, we ended up working at the same place, and we've been friends ever since. And he wanted to do some technical articles, and obviously proximity is really good because we're close to Hereford. So we developed a relationship with Schaeffler through Alistair, and that became, I think, because I'm not looking at the business from a technical point of view, it's always from the business point of view. They realise that isn't that normal, in a relatively small garage like ours. And so we started sort of talking, and then one day I got a phone call saying that they'd had would I fancy going to do a presentation. And I didn't really know much about it, but I thought, I'm always up for having a go at something, and that's how it sort of started really. So I went down to one of the colleges, did a presentation on our story, and it wasn't the best presentation in the world, I've got no doubt, because it was the first one I'd done for quite some time. But what it gave me the opportunity to do was to engage with other garages. And actually, I think if you ever sit in on any presentations from anyone, and I've sat in on yours before, and we've done something together as well, but you can always pick something up. There's always something that you can pick up, and there's always if you tell a story, people can relate to bits of that story regardless of what position they're in their business and how they what stage they're at. So it was for me, it was the chance to go and talk to garages, and I realised actually that I was quite good at being able to see things quickly. Again, maybe it's because of fresh eyes. Maybe it's because of my background is different to lots of garage owners, and that's sort of where it developed. And I've done a few more over the years now with Schaeffler, and totally changed the position of my presentation that I've been doing, and it's more really about making positive decisions is how I've done it. So some of the things that we've spoken about, rather than letting things happen by chance, make some decisions and let it take that course, and that's sort of where I've been talking about with Schaeffler, and it sort of led naturally on to consulting. And one of the things that I have been able to do with some garages is to actually look at it again with fresh eyes. They're typically not from a business background, so they've built in some cases some absolutely amazing businesses, but it's almost grown too much and too quickly, and it's become a bit of a beast, if you like. And it's just to look at that with fresh eyes, to say, right, okay, so what can we do now to look at some of the organisation and how you're operating, what sort of jobs are you doing and why you're doing it, and those sorts of things. So that's where I've been able to sort of go and help those garages. And I think my sort of the difference in my opinion, to some of the others, consultants, and we all have our own skills and specialties, is that I've got a garage which I'm operating currently. And I think that gives you an opportunity to look at things, from a real world perspective of what's happening. And, my garage is not the same as every other garage. However, the stuff that happens to them is going to be happening to me, because that's just how it works, isn't it? And and that's something that I've done. But there's so many great garages out there that just need a little bit of help with certain aspects. And, we're in a fortunate position that, there's absolutely nowhere near enough people able to provide that help. We've obviously, there's people within the industry that are quite prominent and so on, but that's not enough. You probably know the numbers better than I do, but there's so many garages in the UK, and we're tipping at the iceberg by helping some of these, and that's really what my interest came. And it became possible because I freed myself from needing to be in the garage all the time.
Yeah, and that's very you've mentioned some really interesting things there, Tim. I think organic growth in a business is great, and if you're doing something right, to drive customers forward, that helps drive profitability. And as profitability grows, that can lead to a bit of freedom. But I often look at some businesses and go, but for a bit of training early doors, you could have set this up very differently, and organically growing to a situation where it starts to become pressure or problematic. Yeah, you need the approach that you've then adopted to say, let's evaluate where you are and make some tweaks and adjustments, because you as a business owner managing this beast that's a bit of out of control, you haven't got time to go away and take a training course in how to do maybe a 2 or 3 year MBA and really get organisation structure. So you're absolutely right. There are so many garage and business owners out there that are struggling maybe for some advice and some guidance and some counsel, and yeah, you're dead right. There are more problems than there are people to help solve problems. And for me, I often get the look at, actually, when business isn't going brilliantly, and it maybe isn't going brilliantly because it's going brilliantly, that's the problem. You're under huge pressure through success, not through failure. How do you get some respite, maybe a bit of guidance? Being under pressure as a business owner is really, really a big challenge, and you don't have time. So I think what you've got going on there is ideal.
And the garages that I've generally been speaking to they're not struggling businesses in terms of, they're making money. They've got ample customers. So it's not a case of they're struggling like that. It's exactly like you're saying. They're just struggling to manage the beast that they've created. And and it's a challenge in itself. I hope with the presenting side, I can just be at least a little bit of inspiration to some people to think that, telling the journey and the story of where we started and where we are now, it should hopefully give a little bit of a glimpse into what's possible. And not everyone wants that, of course, but there are some people that do, and they think, well, actually, that's, if he can do it, because I can tell you now, if I can do it, anyone can do it. No, you're probably doing yourself down there, Tim, because you've done a fabulous job. So you shouldn't hide that light under a bushel. But you're right. It's what you've done isn't right for everyone, but it's having a different thought process, or maybe a different perspective. So no, you're absolutely right. And in fact, that's the reason why this podcast was set up originally, to try and share some of that information and reach bigger audiences with hints and tips and people's journeys, the voyages they've been on, and some of the learnings that they've done. And I really love that, the old saying, the Chinese say that the wise man learns from his mistakes, but the Japanese say that the wiser man learns from somebody else's mistakes. And I think, in terms of conversations, sharing is one of the ways to give visibility and light. And like, we've talked about the community efforts with Garage Hive and the Garage Inspector. They give a very easy access to conversations with other like-mindeds. And when a garage owner is really struggling, maybe there's pressure on the home front, maybe there's
they're tied to the business and sucked in it. They can't see the wood for the trees. That conversations, coming to a presentation evening like you're doing with Schaeffler around the country, bobbing onto a forum and asking the question, can be the beginning of the change. It just takes that one question or conversation to start to turn things around. And very often the solutions aren't drastically difficult to implement. It's about a change of thinking, a change of style, making a plan and seeing it through. So you must be commended, Tim, for getting on board and helping others change things for the better. And as you say, yeah, it's the beginning of the process. Yeah. Tim, I was going to say, looking at landscapes, looking at the future. If we look at maybe the next few years going out, what do you think are challenges that garages are sort of should be thinking about adopting a position or a mindset on, or to be ready for? What do you think we're going to see change-wise in the coming 5 sort of years?
Yeah, I think obviously EV is a big thing that people need to think about. But it's for me, and I've listened to a lot of people in the industry are far more switched on with their data than I am. But when you look at the data and you correlate it to your own business, losing diesel is a huge problem. From the majority of garage businesses, I think it's about 60% of the revenue for an average or a typical garage. Now, if that goes, what are we going to do? And I think by using the systems that you can get access to, using the data that's readily available, you need to make some positive decisions on what you're going to do. Because if you wait 5 years for that to happen, you won't have a business. You've got to do things to actually make that step forward. So EV and the loss of diesel revenue is going to be a problem, probably I would say beyond 5 years rather than within 5 years, in my opinion. Obviously the recruitment of staff is a challenge for everybody, but I think more emphasis really should be paid to keeping good staff. And that's what we've tried to do as a business, is to try and create an environment and a set of things within the business that keep people engaged and make it a nice place to work. And then I think that the other thing that which leads on to your sort of most recent course is that the understanding that how important that front of house type role is. I think in the last 3 years, I think I've seen a change in people's mentality. And I've said historically that's the part of the business that actually generates the revenue. And some people looked at me as if I was odd when I said that, first of all, but it's now sort of coming to light that unless you're really good at communicating what you do back here, you're not going to make any sales over here where it's where it's important. And I think that understanding that there's a real skill in the front of house is going to be a big shift, I think, in the next 5 years. And I'm really glad that now there are things available to enhance that skill and enhance that knowledge. That's not just through your business, because it's actually, you can start to see it rippling everywhere now, which is really important for us as an industry to get that skill set filled.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're dead right. I think it's the uplift across all operations, and we did see a big push. We particularly specialise in the technical aspect of repairing cars, and that's been a driver ever since we've been involved in it, which is the reason why we chose it. The technology is always pushing on, and there'll always be new courses and always upskilling. But you're right. The bigger picture for me particularly is taking some of my own understanding of business and business processes and thinking, okay, there's a way to help people refine their businesses and dial in on what's important and get the skill level across the teams good to lift the whole business team up. And one of the I think one of the big surprises really is about making the team cross-functional, highly performing. So you're realising that you're all in it together, you're all pushing towards giving the customer the successful repair, service and maintenance option for their vehicle, and extolling the values from back of house to front of house and so forth, and really that cohesive team effort to enhance business operations and profitability, but by virtue of delivering excellence in service is really what we're aiming at. And yeah, you're absolutely right. That's the opportunity we see. Yeah, it is. Tim, we've covered a lot of ground there, and I'm really happy that you're able to share the story. There's some really interesting perspectives there, and I'm hoping our listener will be able to dial in and pick up some of that, and sort of look at their own business and maybe think about reflections for change. One of the traditions we've got here on the podcast is about the magic wishes, and when we get to the end of the conversation, I always like to offer my guests the opportunity to, carte blanche, without any regional rationale, pick on a couple of things that they think would make a big difference to either themselves or the business or the trade or the industry at large. If I was to pose the question with giving you the magic wand and offering you a couple of wishes of things you could change, Tim, what sort of things would you, at a swoosh of a magic wand, make different?
So the first thing is how the industry is perceived. That's for me is just it's completely wrong outside of the industry. It's also wrong inside the industry in some places. But I think there's so many opportunities to work within the automotive sector, and it doesn't have to be a service advisor, it doesn't have to be a technician, it can be in parts, it can be in logistics, it can be in marketing, it can, there's so much within the industry that's available, and we don't harness that enough. And let's be honest, there's a lot of interesting cars from people generally. But you sort of, if you go back to the old days of when I was at school, you think, well, if you were good with your hands, you were pitched over to being a builder or a mechanic or whatever. And that's sort of how, but I think getting that education to the people that help to form those opinions at the lower end at colleges and schools and so on is really important. And there's so much, I've meandered through different bits of the trade through my career, and I don't know if that's it either yet. So there's opportunities to do so much, and I think once you get into the trade and you get an understanding of how it is, I think that's what really gets you. And then the second swoosh, I suppose, would be really in getting businesses to actually stop and look at their own business. I think if you could get every business owner to literally take a day off and stop and look at what they're doing and how they're doing it, and then make a decision on, is that what they want to do, not need, because need and want is very different. If they can actually say, well, let's look at what we've got and what we're doing, and is that what I want to be doing in our business? And if we could get a lot more reflection on that, I think that would make a big positive impact. And it's perfectly doable by everybody. And anybody who says that they can't take a morning off their business, they're doing it wrong, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, no, so very noble wishes there. So yeah, the perception of the trade, and reflection from business owners about driving their business. And I think you summed up beautifully earlier on, Tim. I think make a decision, even if the decision is we're not making a decision. Be proactive with the decision that you're thinking about. Don't drift. Have direction. And taking a bit of time off to reflect is one of those things. And as we've said, I think maybe competition entry gives you a nice mechanism to structure some of that through. So. Yeah, very
absolutely.
Wise. Yeah, very wise words. Tim, it's been awesome. I really appreciate you giving up your time and coming on the show and sharing your views, sharing your journey. It's been amazing, and I love what you do up there at Oldfields. I think it's a great business. I think you've setting the standards and driving upwards and onwards and being rewarded with competition wins and such like is testament to your hard work and that of your family. It gives me a really positive, warm feeling when I hear the words Oldfield Garage. The image, the persona that you built up there is really positive. So honest, thanks very much for sharing it with us.
Yeah, and thanks very much, James. It's been a real pleasure to spend some time talking about our story and feeding that over.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. Thanks ever so much, Tim, and we'll see you real soon.